Hello, welcome back to Puppet Time Online, brought to you by the Puppet Kitchen. I'm your host, Eric Wright, and Puppet Time Online is your chance to sit down with some of the puppetry community's finest, and me, and to hear about what they know about. As usual, I have Katie over here manning the computer.
Hi.
She's going to catch all of your comments and questions and make sure that we get to them today. So if you have anything that you want to ask myself or our guest today, be sure to type it in the chat. We're on YouTube Live, which the chat I think is there, and Facebook Live, which is there. I think Twitch, the comments are there too. So
I don't know that you've ever gotten that right every time you've done it, and it's really funny. And
What do you mean?
Told you.
What do you mean?
I feel like depending on if you're on a laptop or an iPhone, they're in different places. I'm not trying to mess you up. It's funny, and it's only been in my head, and I want you to enjoy the funny too.
I'm glad we've taken this moment on live television for you to point that out.
Live television.
Doesn't matter. It's fine. It's all good. I'm really glad that you're all here, and I'm really glad. I'm mostly glad that you're here.
Medium glad that I'm here.
Yeah, but I am extremely excited for our guest today. She is another one of the puppet artists who is included in the Handmade Puppet Dreams Quarantine Micro Commission cohort.
Woo!
With myself. We just had our screening of films last Saturday, the first world premiere of all of these brand new puppet shorts. You might check their Facebook page, the Handmade Puppet Dreams Facebook page. It might still be up, actually. I think maybe today is the last day that it's up. Yeah. So if you haven't seen those, go check them out. My film is called Moon is Cheese, and our guest today is the creator of the movie called Goodnight Shadow. She's a puppet designer, performer, and teacher. I'm very excited to have on the show Myra Su. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm doing very well. It's such a nice day today, and I'm feeling much better. I was a little sick last week. It wasn't COVID, thank God. But yeah, I feel a lot better. So
good. I'm really happy to have you here. So you've done a ton of stuff. This is the first time that we've ever worked next to each other on this quarantine micro commission cohort. And it was really, really cool to get to know you and to see your work and see it develop from the ground up, this brand new piece. So I'm really excited to talk to you and sort of learn all about you and puppetry stuff. The first place that we like to start with our guests is just asking about how you got into puppetry. What got you into puppetry?
Yeah. And I'm also really curious about your story too, quite frankly, because I've known about Puppet Kitchen, but then through this cohort, I kind of, met you, had a face to the company. So, but anyway, I think maybe compared to some other people, my story came a bit later. My puppet journey came a bit later. I started off, being a theater kid, thinking I wanted to do theater. I was interested in directing, and but I like making things too. I mean, I grew up. I did like drawing growing up, and I loved animation growing up. I was a big anime nerd. And when I was in school, I would try to get as much experience as possible in kind of every facet of theater. So I did some costume design, prop set stuff, even some sound design at some point. So I just like making things. And then it wasn't until junior year of college. God, it was just so fortuitous when I think about it. Manual Cinema taught a class on this, very niche form of shadow puppetry on overhead projectors. Yeah. And there was just something about that medium that really clicked for me because it brought that kind of animation aesthetic and that live theater experience that I love so much in one space.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, this is cool. And so I interned with them, and I still work with them today. And then I also adapted my kind of own personal puppet style out from that. So it all really started with manual cinema. In this kind of niche shadow form.
That's cool. And
yeah.
do you want to just recap for those who are not familiar with what manual cinema does? Do you want to recap a little bit what that style looks like?
Yes, thank you. I think there's some pictures I've shared of what our setup looks like. So we use those analog overhead projectors that your math teacher probably used in school and stuff. And
depending on what age group you're in, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true.
Definitely for me, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, my primary school. Wait, you don't call it primary school, right? You call it grade school? Elementary school. So I went to British. I was in a British school. It's very misleading. I sound like this, but I went to a British school in Hong Kong.
Okay.
So in primary, elementary school, that's what we would use in assembly to like sing songs and stuff. I remember. So we use that kind of technology, line them all up on a table, all like directed to the same part of a screen, and that way we're able to like edit kind of like a movie live on stage. So you can imagine each projector has a different shot of the film, quote unquote film, loaded on top of it. And we're just like controlling which ones are on and off, and having actors duck in and out of the frame to kind of create this tactile theater movie experience. And so this is kind of a first experiment of manual cinemas to use two screens at the same time, and using a digital kind of camera feed to edit between the two screens.
They do, like, there's a camera on the other side of those two screens, and they're mixing the feed into the center screen. Which is what the actual like presentation is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is pretty that was like kind of a first experiment but their origins as a company really was that one screen format. That's cool. Okay, so now we know a little bit like how you got into puppetry. I always like to follow up with what keeps you in puppetry. What keeps me in puppetry? Several things. The first thing I can think of right now is I think the community is really cool. It is, I think, distinctly different from like a traditional theater community, I would say, just because I think there is a probably greater, maybe, okay, to be frank, maybe not racial diversity, but in terms of like diversity and like artistic practice, it's really interesting because you have people who work in the puppet space who might not necessarily even see themselves as performers. And I find it especially refreshing to meet those people who like maybe they're more of like a quiet, like fine artist, and they're just like usually working alone, and then they manifested this kind of puppet piece using their craft. And so you see like, I guess, unconventional people on a performance stage sometimes, and I find that very refreshing and very cool. So just like a really diverse range of performers and creators. And I don't know. And also with puppetry, I just feel like it feels really limitless. I still feel like I still feel like a baby. There's still so much to learn. And there's so many new like materials and tools I want to like experiment with. So it just really feels like, the work is not done. There's so many new things to explore. And the people are really cool. That's a good answer. What kind of stuff, what kind of materials or techniques or things are getting you excited right now? Like what's pulling, like, where do you want to go? What kind of stuff do you want to try? I don't have it next to me right now, but I haven't figured out exactly what I want to do with it yet, but I have a broken model I made. My cat knocked it over, so it's broken now. But I'm really interested in these 3D doodle pens that kids have. Sure. Yeah, so it's like It's go ahead. You were just going to talk about. Oh, no. It's just like basically a 3D printer in your hand. So it's a little bit more, I guess, responsive to
to touch. Anyway, so yeah, like just making, making 3D like plastic models. Yeah, this one's
That's
broken.
cool.
Had used to have like little things on it. And so I was like, this could be an interesting way to make shadow models or something. Because if you shine a light through it, you get that kind of line detail. It looks like it's a 3D drawing. I mean, that's the point of the toy.
Right. It's got a nice like a rough quality to it. It's got a nice squiggle through the line, which is really nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's like a fun tool. And also, this is really sad, but my art store near me in my neighborhood closed down. So they had a whole bunch of clearance, and I have like all the color cardstock I could ever want now. And so actually your piece was really inspiring, because like I definitely want to take advantage of making all these kind of more colorful. I mean, Goodnight Shadow was so black and white. I'm ready to work in color now. But yeah, like working in that kind of way you did with that multiple colored layers. I love that. That's so cute.
Yeah, I've been definitely getting into that same thing recently as well. And just, I really like that, that sort of bold cutout, like simple shapes combined into complex images, I think is really fun.
That's what I love about your piece. Yeah. Even that bramble scene with the fox in it. Yeah. Just like, I love that. Love that stuff.
I actually have it right here.
Oh, you do?
Well, I pulled it out for the Q&A.
Oh, yeah. Yes. See, I love that. It's so effective. And that's not different colors, right? It is the same material.
It's all, there's like 2 or 3 different colors in there.
Oh, great.
There's like
so
2 or 3
effective.
different colors of brown. It's like 1, 2, 3, something like that. But yeah, it's pretty small scale. I'm so glad you like it.
I love that. Yeah, even something like that was like cool. I love it.
Cool. You do. I'm curious about that analog, like the analog. I don't know, the presence of analog materials and techniques in puppetry. And as somebody who works in a lot of, you also combine a lot of higher tech stuff. You do projection stuff onto crankies and onto, overhead projector stuff. What do you think, like, what is it about the analog technology that you like, or that lends itself to the work that you do?
Yeah. That's a question for any puppeteer. I mean, I think it really gives you, it's really direct access to what you're making, right? Like, even though I do like to play with video and projection and stuff, at the end of the day, like the foundation really is about making things with your hands. So there is like a direct, I guess, communication line almost, because when I'm working on the computer, it can feel a little separate. Because you're not directly touching it. It's just something as primal as that. And I just like how accessible it is and cheap it is. It doesn't require, obviously with this film, we were lucky to have a budget and stuff, but fundamentally, like you can really just make puppets out of trash. And I love looking at a paper. So accessible stuff. That's what I like about it a lot.
Is there a way that you decide what in your piece is going to be analog and what's going to be digital? Or, where do those decisions come from?
Well, I didn't necessarily know. I didn't necessarily know.
A ton of digital work. Like I remember as part of the cohort was you're doing tons of After Effects work for like to augment the shadows that you also had in analog form in the film. There's a seamless blending between the two. What was the, like, how do you decide what's what?
I don't think I did decide. it was just like, oh my God, I like had this concept and now I have to execute it. Oh no. Like there were parts where I thought I could do more manually, and then it turned out it needed to be a more digital. It was a big learning experience for me. I didn't have a clear game plan going into it. I went in thinking one thing, and then I was like, oh no, this requires a lot more digital stuff than I thought. But generally speaking, kind of going back to that like analog question, I think it's helpful. I think it is kind of helpful coming from a more analog background when you're going into digital stuff because I like to put it this way, like, I don't know, it makes you come up with, and I say stupid in a good way. It makes you come up with like simple, stupid ways to do things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like, for instance, like, all the like the shadow stuff, a lot of those effects were done by hand. Like I have no patience to really figure out like how to do it in After Effects if I can just do it with my own hands and no performance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Like that. I think there's a picture, the effect I'm probably most happy with is, I think it's the picture with the baby in the room with it's the one I use for the title card. The baby, that shadow. Yeah. So I wanted the shadow to kind of like basically imagining a hunched person and like straightening up their back. And so, I just did that by curling a piece of paper and then pushing it up with a piece of acetate. But then with a combination of digital effects, making it look a little bit more transparent and overlaying it on top of this. It was just like a manual, stupid way of doing it. But I thought that was one of the more effective effects that came about. So, so trying to apply that kind of analog sensibility to these digital things you want to do. So it's not like, oh, I need this program, I need to learn. So it's like, no, I'm gonna do a thing with a stick and then like see what happens.
Great. I love this shot. This gives a good sense of like what we're dealing with, because we lose the frame, or we lose the frame of reference of scale in the film. But this is really great. So you made so many objects for this film. Though luckily they're all flat, so
how
did you like, you said you didn't have the best game plan for this film going into it and had to sort of learn how to do things a lot on the fly, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what your planning process was like. Once you had the story idea, how did that implement itself in design and construction?
Well, I guess the starting point is the same as what I would do for any of my other pieces, even live work. I always work heavily from a storyboard. That's my script. I go into the storyboard kind of just thinking about the kind of pictures, camera angles, like moments I kind of wanted to achieve, and while figuring out how that flows with the narrative of the story. And also that kind of process, because how I do it is like each frame of the storyboard tries to capture like one or two kind of puppet actions. And that helps me simplify Oso's puppet designs, because especially with this project, I mean, we're working pretty much in isolation. So it's not like I can call in my usual puppet friends to come in and help. So I was like, okay, I really need to be strategic and have each puppet I'm making pretty simple. So I kind of imagine this as an experiment in making a puppet animation hybrid. So like with a hand-drawn animation, you have, at least in the traditional process, right? You have like the main animator would like draw the main pose. Like say it's a punch, it's like this pose, and then the landing pose is this, and then the other animators will kind of do the fill-in. And so I was imagining doing a puppet thing that way, except using live performance to be the fill-in kind of motions. So even though there were a lot of drawings and a lot of puppets, it's nowhere near the number that like a drawn animation would require. That's my box of puppets, not including some of the set pieces. But
that's incredible.
I love it. But it's kind of, but this is the satisfying thing with puppets, right? Like even though they're drawing based, they're manifested in front of you. They're literal things you can touch.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
What's your storyboard process like? Like how detailed are the actual sketches in your storyboard? Because I know that can have a pretty wide range from what I assume is like my storyboards, which are like super fast, the fastest way to like get the idea of like where people are in the frame and like what the camera's doing, to, you know, basically making a whole graphic novel of your film before you make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved your sketches. Yeah, I think it actually shows that you're a really good fine artist, because you're able to draw very clear images, and like, and you were like, oh, they're just scribbles. And I'm like, those look pretty nice. Yeah, I don't think I'm the best fine artist. Obviously I can draw if I push myself, but I think the main distinguishing factor is speed, and I'm still very slow.
Oh yeah,
I can show you some storyboards.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. This one was the most illustrated, neatest, nicest storyboard I made, because it was for film, and whereas with a live show, there's a lot more space to kind of figure out things as you go. So the storyboard is can be a little bit more loosey goosey, but this one, it's like so much more precise, and I was doing all this compositing that I wasn't sure what the heck I was doing. So so they're pretty these are pretty detailed.
Gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to really make some effort to make it a little bit clearer. But to give you an idea of how I usually work, I'll show you a scrappy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually just do stick figures and stuff. I'll show you a funner page. This is from my Cranky. Oh, there's a picture of it. The Cranky performance with the ink person.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's the one you did for Puppet Playlist, right?
Oh no, that was the one I did for the Slamdemic, the National Slamdemic.
Slamdemic, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the storyboard for that. Super simple. It's just like pencil and pen. Let's see. I have another one here.
Do you go through a lot of do you go through a lot of versions on your storyboards? Like what's the revision process like?
Yeah, I've always been this way. I'm the type of person who spends a really long time on one storyboard, and I think back to college, where there's like two different types of people who write, the way they write essays for class. There's the type of people who like write a lot really fast, and they're just constantly cutting and stuff. I'm the person who like sits in one place for hours and types 2 sentences. It's probably, I don't know, it's probably not the best way to do things, but that's just how I am. I just sit there for so like it takes me a long time to do these storyboards, and usually there aren't that many edits, though as you can see here, obviously as I'm working, like I might cut scenes out or rearrange things, but generally speaking, I'm not going through pages and pages of material. I'm a lot of sitting and staring for hours.
Yeah. This is the final version of that Inkblot one.
Yeah, that's the product. So even though it's a live show, it's still kind of planted out like an animation.
Cool. And this is one where you interact with projected versions of yourself and projected images of the puppet, right?
Yeah. So this is the only piece of mine that I'm a character in, because I guess one of the reasons why I like the that overhead manual cinema style was because I didn't have to be I could just have the work speak for itself, and I'm just like the performer technician person. But this one, I'm a character in this piece, interacting with a pre-recorded little avatar of myself that's projected in the Cranky. And the big experiment with this was, so usually with these Crankies, like I have one behind me, usually you have like a very intricate like scroll loaded in your box. This one was a big experiment. There was no art on that scroll at the beginning. I was so scared. The first time I performed this was at the Baltimore Cranky Festival alongside like these huge like Cranky like makers, like people like Catherine Fahey and stuff like. Anyway, it was I was so scared, because I was like, here's my blank Cranky, and they're like, what's going to happen? And so the blank cranky, the whole idea was the brushwork, the art will kind of appear over the course of the show. So
Yeah.
it's almost, I guess it's almost performance arty in some way. So I wanted to use the motion of the scroll to kind of make the brush strokes happen. So I would be holding a brush stroke at the back of the cranky, and because it was rice paper, it would like suck up all the ink and show it on the other side. So I was just able to drag the paper across the paintbrush and kind of, F around with my little character in the box. And then she eventually revolts, pulls me in the cranky, and then like paints over the cranky with digital ink. So there was an interaction of live and video. Yeah. What's real? What's pre-recorded?
That's really cool. Oh yeah, you want to throw a question up there?
Question.
Oh, yeah, from Lormiga. Yeah, right. From Eileen. Congratulations.
Hi.
What kind of camera do you use for filming? That's a great question.
Yeah, I usually use, I don't have it on me. I use a Sony A5100. So it's one of those mirrorless interchangeable cameras. I just like how small, I like compact portable things. Yeah, but that gives you a lot of manual control options. As you can see from the photos there, it's really hard to photograph and film these kind of projected pieces. So you want a camera that is able to, even that is a little tough. Yeah, because like it's hard to capture the detail both from this high-powered projector and also the darker exterior. So still a challenge, but yeah, it helps to have a camera that you can adjust the shutter speed, aperture, things like that. Yeah, but I've also used cameras. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I remember there being a lot of conversation about good cameras to use in the cohort. That was a big, that was a long conversation. It actually got my head spinning because I was like, oh my gosh, I need a fancy camera.
No, but
and for mine,
everyone I've showed your piece to, I'm like, this was on a phone. And they're like, are you kidding? They're just like, are you kidding me? Yeah.
Well, there came a point where I realized like all of the things that we were talking about needing fancy cameras for, like shooting in low light or like having good racked focus, or all of those things were not things that I would need to deal with if I was just like shooting from the same, like this distance in bright light on a table. So yeah, you want to throw another question there?
Yeah, we have another question. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's from Julie. Hi, Julie. Another last week's guest and another cohort friend. Is that performance recorded somewhere? Sounds rad. It does. It is rad. The Slamdemic one?
I know it was on IBEX's Facebook page, but I don't know if it lives somewhere else. Do you guys?
The Slamdemic? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Is it?
Love to do some hunting.
I believe the Slamdemic video is still on the IBEX Puppetry video page.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to see a live streamed version of this piece. Oh my God, there was so much to figure out with the lighting on a webcam and stuff for that. So you'll be able to see a live stream version of it there alongside some other really, really cool performances. Yeah.
That's cool.
I'll try to find the link and put it in the comments.
Drop it in the comments there. Okay, cool.
Thanks.
So I'm curious about crankies also, because I know you teach a lot of classes about crankies, and like you have a lot of instruction about like how to make that a part of your work. How did they work their way into your work, and like what brings you back to that particular kind of tool?
I definitely can attribute this all to one person, a really good friend of mine, Emily Schubert, who is an amazing artist based in Baltimore, though she's actually on her way to do some really awesome like residency in Alaska right now. Anyway, but it's really thanks to her. So we met at one of the national slams in Atlanta. We were in the same lineup, and she took a chance on me. She invited me, even though I'm not a cranky artist per se, at that time, at least, she invited me to create a new piece for a cranky piece for that Baltimore Cranky Festival.
Cool.
So every year in Baltimore, they have a whole festival dedicated to this art form. It's really amazing. It's such a special experience, honestly. If any of you are ever in Baltimore, yeah, it's something. I've never experienced anything like that before. So she took a chance on me, and and that kind of really forced me to revisit this medium. I made a cranky very early on, like straight out of college, but I didn't really think too much about the form. But this one I was like really pushed to think, how can I really mix my shadow projection-y kind of side of myself into this form? And so that ink performance is actually what came out of that. And then ever since, I've just been like really interested in exploring, that kind of movement in the cranky more, how you can futz with it, and tell stories. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Did you have a question you want to throw
we
up there?
have another question. We got some great questions coming.
Oh, from Rob Roy McGregor. Does setting up white balance and camera properly help your setup? Oh yeah, like just going back to the camera setups, especially for live performance, I would want to know, like, white balance is the sort of where you set the level of white on your camera. Like, what's the color of white? Is it more blue? Is it more red? That kind of thing. How do you go setting up your camera for a performance like that? And how is it different for when you do it for a live stream?
Yeah. Great question. Also, I love the sound of your name, Rob Roy McGregor. It's like nice ring to it.
It's a good name.
It's a good name. Yeah. Perfect number of syllables. It's different depending on if you're live streaming or if you're just recording for film. The main issue is if you're live streaming, you can't use like a fancy camera as a webcam unless you have all this expensive equipment. I think it's called Black Magic, like a little box thing.
A little breakout box, yeah.
Little breakout box, yeah. So it can be quite expensive to rig like a nicer camera as a webcam. So when I was doing the ink performance as a live stream, I had my partner basically just actively changing the white balance as we move through different parts of the performance. So
interesting.
It was just kind of just using like the webcam program, nothing fancy in comparison to like a DSLR. It's just like moving the slider around to adjust to the light. But then of course if you're just straight up filming with like a DSLR or something, then you have a lot more options available to you. It's almost like DJing when you're doing the live stream stuff. It's like
right, kind of just riding those sliders around.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what, because I don't know, I haven't worked with, I want to go back to crankies just a little bit because I haven't worked with a ton of cranky stuff. I've done some, but not a lot. And I don't know that I've been a part of a lot of shows that rely on that as the storytelling device. What do you feel like is a good, or what makes for a good cranky as a storytelling device?
You're so good at asking questions, Eric. Wow. That's a really good question. That's something I'm very invested in my, especially with the classes I'm teaching, kind of honing in on what potentials this medium kind of provides. I think to me what a very satisfying cranky piece is when it takes full advantage of where the movement of that paper scrolling and the directionality of the paper itself is a narrative choice. So I mean, this kind of goes with any, I think, artistic form. To me, the most satisfying thing is when form and content feel very tightly knit together. Like you can't, like there's never a moment where you sit back and go like, wait, why did you choose to do it this way? Like, why did you choose to use this medium at all? So yeah, that's kind of a vague response, but yeah, that kind of tight knitness.
Have you ever seen any Cantastoria shows? Are you familiar with Cantastoria?
Yeah, I haven't seen many, but my friend Emily Schubert, who works a lot in Cranky, and she's made some Cantastoria pieces, and they're just wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious because so Cantastoria is the storytelling technique of basically like telling a story on a single board or a flip chart, more or
Yeah.
less, right? Where like your story is illustrated out on one board or a series of boards, and you kind of tell the story as you're pointing to it. And I'm fascinated with it because it's frequently looped into the puppetry sphere, even though I'd say
Mhm.
it's kind of on the outside edge of what people would consider puppetry, since nothing, there's no objects that are moving except the audience's focus. But it seems like it's real close to Cranky storytelling.
Mhm.
And I'm not surprised to hear that your friend has both of those in her toolbox. But I was wondering if you saw any crossover in those as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, make me think about it this a little bit more. Yeah, I think there is that makes sense that they're kind of appeal to similar sensibilities because Cranky also often is paired with like oral storytelling and music. So there's aspects of Cantastoria that really, in terms of like delivering a performance, that make a lot of sense with Cranky as well. Yeah, yeah. In terms of the pointing to a painting and going through a flip chart, that doesn't necessarily feel the most puppety, but I feel like because the it puts the performer and the storyteller in the front, there is a lot of potential crossover, because if you have like a glove puppet or something, that could very be easily, it's just so easily you can incorporate all these other more, I guess, traditional puppety elements into the performance. And yeah, Emily does that really well too, where she brings in like little miniatures, like little puppets that she also performs with in front of the like flip chart. So yeah, it's just another device.
That's cool.
Mhm.
That's really cool. What is your how much storytelling training do you have, or that's like not necessarily theatrical? I don't know. I guess that's my question. Is like, does your storytelling training come just from your theatrical training, or do you have other sources of learning to tell stories?
Huh. Yeah. Um, you know what? I think I would say I think I have my mom to credit for a lot of it. I wouldn't call it training per se, but just exposure to things. So my mom's really cool. My mom's really cool. She's so she's a professor who teaches literature. So um yeah, at a young age, yeah, she would just recommend all sorts of different things to me, even films too. I mean, I remember my mom even taking me to some X-rated films and stuff. So I got exposed to a lot of different things. Also from all sorts of places. I mean, I was born in the States, but I grew up in Hong Kong as well. So I grew up with a lot of Hong Kong cinema. I grew up with a lot of Japanese cinema as well, and as well as like all the Western American British stuff. So I feel like just being exposed to a lot of things helps, and a diverse range of things. Yeah, but in terms of training, I mean, I guess nothing super specialized. I mean, other than, just going to school, learning how to write and things like that. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like is there anything in the like media and stories that you grew up with that you can kind of draw a straight line between that and your work now, where you see like, oh yeah, this is like the way I draw this, or these stories that I tell comes directly from seeing these kinds of movies or whatever?
Yeah. Huh. Sometimes I'm not even sure. When you're in the midst of it, it probably doesn't feel clear. I feel like it's only in retrospect that you like see possible connections.
Yeah.
Well, so at least with this most recent film, so obviously it kind of has an anime aesthetic, and I don't think it's a coincidence that I grew up with a lot of anime. So the art style might kind of veer in that direction.
Yeah.
But as for like, I would need to think about this more because
Sure.
yeah, but yeah, in the moment, I'm not really thinking too directly about drawing from a specific thing. It kind of, when you look back at it, it's like, oh yeah, I see where this might come from.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to throw another question in there?
Yeah, we had another good question.
Oh, yeah, from Eileen.
Oh, Eileen.
Question for both. Have you tried creating layers with glass? If so, how to prevent reflection? That's a really good question. And considering that isn't shadow puppetry, colored paper puppets and layers. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should go first, Myra. I'll tell you. I'll answer that too, but you should go first.
Yeah, Eric, you probably have a better response because I have no experience working with glass. I'm pretty intimidated. Honestly, by materials that I cannot just work with scissors and stuff. So like cutting plexiglass to size and stuff, that scares me. Anything that requires, I guess, hard tools like that.
Sure.
But I would love to try. Yeah. Not a good response, but
no, that's fine. It's funny. I've done a couple of shows in cut paper with this like down shooter camera setup. And the previous shows that I've done have all been more or less like a puppet, like laying on a piece of paper, and the piece of paper is the background. And for this movie that I made, I remember thinking like I really wanted to have lots of depth. I want to have a lot of layers. I want to like have a lot of depth to it, and like so I made this little box and like had each level had its own pieces of paper. And it was only after I started shooting that I realized that my puppets didn't have anything to lay on because like the box, like there's no piece of paper. So I now have to like hold everything. So like the whole point of like having a down shooter camera and like being able to lay puppets down and like do another thing was out the window. And then later I was like thinking about this like how like behind the scenes at old Disney animation where they came up with this like layers of glass, and they painted mats on layers of glass and then moved those pieces in, for stop motion animation. And I was like, oh yeah, well that's like probably a good idea. If I had made each layer in plexi or glass, like then I would have something to lay my puppet down on. So I'm right at the point where I'm like, oh yeah, glass seems like a good idea. Or plexi might help, but I have no idea how I would get rid of reflection or anything like that. I assume that when I try it, I'll just play around with where the lights are and like whether or not my set box has blinders on it. I don't know. I think it will take a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. And yeah, I also teach some classes on kind of based on, it's kind of crazy how quickly this kind of happened, but yeah, I got some requests to teach kind of animation puppety classes based on this experience making this film. Yeah. And it's funny. Yeah. That plexiglass style. Yeah. The easiest way to do it would be to backlight it and make a shadow piece, kind of like that Lot Reiniger stuff. Sure. Yeah, but the front lighting is always difficult because you want to avoid any hot spotting. So you want to like diffuse the light as much as possible. Oh, Rob Roy again.
Someone from
Rob Roy.
Yeah, making use. Oh, great. Yes, Rob Roy McGregor telling us to use the glass without the glare. That makes sense, and that's really good to know.
Oh, that's the thing. Oh yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rob Roy.
This is why it's important to do your research before.
Ask your community.
Ask your community. Yeah. People have probably had this problem before.
Another good question from the community.
Yes.
That'd be a good one to.
Yeah. Oh, from Brenda Plumy. Great interview. Oh, thank you. Tell us about editing tools for beginners. That's a really good question. Yeah. I know that was a big sticking point for me too. How did you, what was useful to you in terms of editing tools?
Yeah, I'm spoiled. So, through my day job, I have access to the Adobe Creative Suite. So I was able to use like, industry standard stuff like Premiere.
Sure.
But I mean, as a teenager, I don't think it really exists anymore. I'm pretty sure PC like retired it. As a teenager, I used to make like little films and stuff on like well, just like video recorded stuff of family stuff on Windows Movie Maker and free programs that came with your computer. And I'm sure
Sure.
people with Mac, iMovie is I think a really great powerful tool, free powerful tool.
Yeah, that's what I used for my movie was.
What? My God.
Yeah. I was
love
right at the
iMovie.
bleeding edge of what iMovie could do, really. But
That's incredible, Eric. Gosh.
well,
Jeez.
I will say, I think the best editing tool for me was the storyboard,
Mm,
because that that is the way that I could do all of the work on like what needed to be seen and for how long before I got into the camera or the computer. Because once I had that, and
yeah.
I knew what I was like, I knew what when I had a good storyboard, then I knew what I needed in the camera, so I know when I have it. And then when I get to the computer, I can like chop it pretty easily and then just lay things next to each other, which is like all iMovie does, is like put one thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. And like there's a little stuff with transitions and stuff that you know that makes things more complicated, but really it's like how long do you see this bit, then the next thing, then the next thing, and that's all the storyboard is for. And that was really like the biggest help for me editing this movie.
Yeah, that makes a lot. And you made an animatic. You spent, I think, a lot of time on your animatic too, which made
I
a
did.
lot of sense to make that smoother, that
I
process.
did. Yeah, that was part of. I did make an animatic, which was essentially just like scanning my sketchbook, and then, it, like again in iMovie, you can just like put in a picture and put it for a period of time, so that this was part of what I used to communicate with my musician John Dyer, and with the VO artist Aaron Harrington to like match up the story, and so they could sort of see it in real time. But it wasn't that much. But then I didn't have to worry about the editing part of it, the computer suite. I could just worry about like which is the story working, is the scene flowing, is the like I don't know.
It also seemed to help with collaborating with people that you weren't in the same room with.
Yes, that was a
Mhm.
huge plus. Having that tool to be able to send to people to say, this is like the length of time of the movie. This is how much music, this is how much music we need, was really helpful.
Yeah. I guess this is all to say, really, like if you're just chopping up clips and putting them in a specific order, you don't need anything fancy. I only needed
Yeah.
what I needed because I was doing all that compositing stuff.
Right.
But other than that, you're all set with a basic program. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Like,
I mentioned, like they asked us in the Q&A after the screening, like what were your biggest hurdles in making this? And I really feel like I was my biggest hurdle, and like worrying about what camera I needed, like whether it was going to be fancy enough, and what editing suite I needed, and whether it was going to be fancy enough, and not focusing on this, like the story, which was really the important part,
mhm.
was what was the biggest hurdle for me. And like once I kind of got out of the way and just said like, I only need this iPhone, I only need this iMovie, like that's what I need. It was a big, took a lot of pressure off.
See, another great example of coming from that hands-on analog puppet background, I think really
Yeah.
helps because we just naturally think in this troubleshooty way of like, yeah.
Yeah, like let's only use what we need.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it can really, especially with filmmaking, can really spiral out of control.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, it can be an expensive medium for sure.
Mhm. But
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be. I think
It does- yeah.
what's great is that it, we can see that there's such a wide range of what can be put on film, especially using puppetry, and like adapting puppet styles to film. I think is, there's a lot of cool entry points that I think I would encourage a lot of people to try. Obviously, you have tons of experience in making theater and making specifically puppet shows that are more filmic. Shadow puppetry, especially, and crankies are some of the more filmic styles of puppetry that there are. You can use pans and zooms and cuts and like all of that. So I don't know, do you feel like you have a more filmic perspective on the pieces that you make?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, the precise reason why I was so drawn to that manual cinema style, because you're not only performing like a character or a puppet, you're literally performing a film technique or a camera look. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just, expanded in my mind of what puppetry involves and how you can make hands-on animation in this way. Yeah, like, yeah, I mean, if you see us backstage in some of these shows, like even when I'm just panning a shot, I'm just basically I'm just puppeting a camera. I'm like still breathing and doing the same kind of stuff I would be doing if I'm puppeting a character. So really, really imbuing that
There you
kind
are.
of, that one is from that is from Spot of Bother, which is that simple it's like the I call them like bathroom icon image piece. The one with simple figures. That's
sure.
That piece.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that one. That was a very, very simple puppet show. But pans, you're breathing into it. You're really imbuing like a human hand to any part of that performance. So sorry, what was the question? It was
You have a filmic perspective on the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I'm drawn to these kind of more 2D puppet media. Yeah, because it just naturally incorporates those considerations. Yeah.
Well, I think the work you do is just so cool, and like it's got such great style, and you know, I really can see the care and the storytelling that you put into your pieces. It really shines, and I'm really happy that you're making cool work. So I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, I need to figure that out for myself.
Welcome to the party. But it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for being here and chatting with me today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Eric.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, we made it to the end of another Puppet Time Online. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all your great questions. They were incredible. Thank you so much. Big thanks to our guest, Myra Su, today. If you want to check out more of her work, you can check out her website at myrasu.com. Also, you can follow her on Instagram, myra.y.su. We're on Instagram as well. This is where we started this show at the Puppet Kitchen. And we also have some swag that you can pick up at our store, which is at our Square site. Scrolling across the bottom. There it goes. You can follow us at puppetkitchen.com. And also, we have a Patreon page that you can support this show directly. You could subscribe to this show and help us get more great guests like Myra Su and more talking about puppets with the puppetry community and me and and Kate. And so I'm really happy to have you. We'll catch you again next week at Wednesday at 2:00 Eastern. It's right in the middle of the week. So thank you so much for joining me. And just remember, until next time, you don't have to do everything to do something. I'll see you next time.